What is a scientific fact that creeps you out? Honestly, nothing is more creepy than how deep-sea anglerfish mate. The deep sea is dark, and the anglerfish are spread very thinly. Therefore, when an anglerfish meets another anglerfish, it's incredibly important they get the chance to mate over and over again. The evolutionary strategy that deep-sea anglerfish devised is extra creepy. The male latches onto the female, biting her and never letting go. That way he can inseminate the egg she drops. Not that bad so far, right? But wait, how does he eat if he's latched on his mate? Well, the circulatory systems fuse and the female provides nutrients for the male through this fused circulatory system. The true horror starts here. The organs of male start to wither and atrophy, being absorbed into the female. Eventually, the male is reduced to a lump of testicles the females use to fertilize their eggs. Females are often covered in bumps of several males that have melted into the female, becoming a literal body horror lump of meat on the female. In some species of animals, multiple offspring are born but only one is actually raised by the mother. The others are born only as backup in case the firstborn does not survive. When the firstborn is fine, which is the typical case, it kills the others. A fever is your body way of saying, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We either destroy the enemy or we die with them. Your brain is making decisions before you are even aware of the decisions it has made. It also makes decisions based off of learned behavior and you just go along with it. Because of some pesticides used, roaches would not go anywhere near a meth lab. Edit did not expect this much after reading some RPF. For those you are asking, meth labs have been known to produce toxic gas, like phosphine, which a common insecticide. Phosphine is often used in silos to deal with vermin. That as the permafrost melts, a lot of locked-up methane will be released, and microorganisms there will wake up and do their jobs, breaking down organic matter, and release more methane and greenhouse gases. If you believe strongly enough that you have been cursed, your brain can shut itself off entirely in severe cases. The psychological term for it is voodoo death syndrome. It is just the fact you can literally think yourself to death that unsettles me so. That the only reason you are a functional human is that your DNA is so tangled that entire sections cannot get decoded and screw it up. It turns out I must have majorly misunderstood something, as this is very wrong. Thanks Reddit, but as far as I am aware the brain fact is true though. A gamma ray burst could wipe out all life on Earth instantly with no warning. When the Titanic sank, none of the shoes decomposed, so there's a ton of shoes at the bottom of the ocean. Just how big of a number a mole actually is. The sudden urge to jump off of a very high height. You can be physically and mentally stable to the greatest degree and still have this feeling when at such a high height. Some mutations of just one letter in the DNA code can kill the fetus almost instantly, but some people live and have a seemingly healthy life while missing a whole chromosome. If you understand anything about biology, that is completely wild. Thinking about how breathing and lungs work freaks me out. Once I start thinking about it, all I can think about is my breathing, and then I have to force myself to stop thinking about it. There is something called the squeeze, where when people had old scuba suits with tubes, you could actually get sucked into that tube if the pressure was off. You are literally shredded through your own breathing tube. Scientists are barely keeping up with the influenza virus. It keeps on mutating rapidly. It really wants to get inside you. That so many vegetables came from the same plant: broccoli, kale, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, etc. They are, botanically speaking, the same species. Humans have just bred them to emphasize different traits: buds, leaves, tubers. Imagine if humans were as genetically flexible. Imagine a person walking around with giant toes, but otherwise normal. Actually, plant genetics in general is a weird world. Your brain literally creates your own reality and your senses and body just go along with it. The way quantum mechanics works is pretty creepy to me for reasons I cannot exactly pin down. Particles are not points, at least not that we can possibly ever observe. The best physical description of a particle's position is a wave over at least a four-dimensional volume showing where it probably is. I say four-dimensional because there is a non-zero time uncertainty as well. This is not a limitation on what we can observe. It is an actual testable property of particles, that they do not have exact positions, velocities, energies, times. When they are observed by interaction, the wave collapses, which still does not make it exact, just more likely to exist in a smaller space. The argument that there really is an exact point in there somewhere and it is just always hidden from observation is not true. The Bell inequality proved that. For example, because of this uncertainty, it is physically impossible to cool helium enough to freeze it at atmospheric pressure. This uncertainty even applies to the vacuum. It cannot be at zero energy, because that would violate the uncertainty principle. So sets of virtual particles pop into existence in the vacuum and stick around for an incredibly short amount of time, given by the time uncertainty, before annihilating each other in a zero net energy process. This is, very simply put, how black holes hypothetically lose mass. Pairs of virtual particles are spontaneously created near the event horizon. One enters, one escapes, the one inside annihilates a particle within. The one that leaves becomes real. Information is transported outside the event horizon in an incredibly obfuscated, but still existent, form, meaning information is not destroyed by black holes. Then you get into the weird math. It starts raising questions about what real is. Can we say something is real if it is not testable? Or is the math describing the situation the closest to real that we can get? For example, you could look at the predicted path for a particle. There is a non-zero chance for it to take any path between 2 points. So you basically take all the possible paths, account for the probability that it takes that path, add them all up, and you can recover Newtonian mechanics from it in the classical limit. Is this actually what is happening? It is not really testable. Even the Bell inequality that I mentioned earlier has some crazy philosophical implications. It basically says one of three things are true: information travels faster than light, which we have never seen; cause does not always come before effect, WTF; or the universe is superdeterministic, which would disprove free will. We do not know which. People make a lot of crazy claims based on quantum mechanics, and I think a lot of it has to do with how uncomfortable the idea of living in a universe that seems to be inherently uncertain is. You get and cure cancer in your own body thousands of times a day. Humans are bioluminescent, nothing to do with body temperature. We emit visible light that can be photographed in specific conditions, but this light is not visible to us, which makes it a strange thing to have evolved, and begs the question, what organisms is this light visible to, and why? Adding an edit for all the comments explaining evolution. Please read the thread before commenting. I find this a creepy fact due to implications on interspecific relationships, not because I think prehistoric humans went shopping for a bioluminescent hat with a specific motive in mind. Rogue black holes. There are black holes that just are floating around in space and potentially ducking up solar system just by passing through it. Not exactly scientific or creepy, but it is close enough, and I want to contribute. Mouth pipetting was a thing in labs in the 1980s. A pipette is, for simplicity's sake, a glass straw that lab staff would use to transfer liquids. Nowadays we use special bulbs that, when squeezed, would suck up the liquid for us, kinda like a turkey-based Rohr eyedropper. Before we had these bulbs, lab workers had to use their mouths to suck up the liquid, which meant if they were not careful they did get whatever they were sucking up in their mouth. I am currently training to be MLAT, and those fluids would usually be urine, liquid stool, sputum and so on. So mouth pipetting is still a thing. I am Canadian and I have been told that it is rare or non-existent in our labs. There is more microorganisms on your body than people on Earth. Parasites can live anywhere inside of you, for years unnoticed. A simple migraine could be a tapeworm crawling in your brain, causing damage. Your eyes begin to blur frequently and you do not know why, and it is not getting better. Losing weight and having diarrhea, but it is not a stomach bug. Well, I guess it is. You are having a difficult time catching your breath and your chest does not feel right. It could just be some parasite hanging out, using you. A doctor once told me, on average every human has 3 anomalies, not all are visible. You can be convinced you committed a crime, you can also give false confessions. After being decapitated there are still few seconds of brain activity that happen before you snuff out. Due to relativity, it is impossible to measure the speed of light in a straight line. The only way we have measured it is by round trip with mirrors. For all we know, it could be instantaneous going one way, and half the speed of light in the other, and it would be impossible to tell. The mantis shrimp can see colors that our eyes are not capable of perceiving. Think about that, what else are we just not capable of sensing? Violets secrete a chemical that causes you to forget what they smell like afterwards. You're essentially getting roofied every time you sniff one. The first eye that can successfully pass the Turing test would be able to pretend that it could not. Most of the water on the earth will rain down at some point. The creepy fact about this is that the human body is 60% water, meaning that at some point the same water that runs throughout your body, the one on your blood, bones, brain, etc., will rain down at some point. The universe is unbelievably infinite, while simultaneously unbelievably infinitesimal. The universe has 1022 stars, a rough guess. This is an unfathomably large number for humans to comprehend, but bear with me, there is roughly 100,000 million stars in our galaxy alone, and there are roughly 125 billion galaxies. A single drop of water contains 1021 H2O molecules, not too far off from the number of stars in the whole universe, a very similar number, but contained in a single drop of water. It blows my mind that the universe can contain such mind-boggling numbers of things on such wildly different scales. There is so much to reality that the human mind just is not capable of grasping. This is probably more cool than creepy, but spider goats exist. There is this material called that is spider silk that comes from a goat. Basically someone put orb weaver DNA into a goat so that spider silk could be harvested from goat milk. We know more about the moon than we do our own oceans. The sun will eventually die out. There is a fungus that turns ants into zombies, and when they die it will be in the best position to spread more of the spores. I could be drinking the same water that my extremely far relative drank back in like the 1800s. I had a professor in college who said that if you were not terrified by the concept of entropy, you did not fully understand it. What is it? Every time energy changes it does so imperfectly. Usually there is heat, or noise, or light made, but another byproduct is entropy. It is like every transaction leaves the energy a little worse, and eventually the theory is all energy will have been used and degraded. The entire universe would assume a uniform temperature of about 3 or 4 K. I read a theory that was either sufficiently advanced it went so far over my head I could not jump to get hit by it, or it was well-written fiction. But though it was possible the universe was nearing this state before the Big Bang. Apparently, the following statement creeps others out: your bones are wet. Years ago I saw an episode of Monsters Inside Me where this guy was doing something outside and a fly flew into his eye. It only made contact for about a microsecond, but it was enough time for it to lay eggs. After they hatched they started eating his eye from the inside and he was starting to go blind until the doctor figured out what was wrong. Just imagine that. Getting your eye eaten from the inside and losing your sight all because a fly very briefly made contact with you. Ever since I learned about this I get really paranoid when there is a fly around my face because of the fact that this could possibly happen to me. Any cosmological fact is actually scary, you know. We can randomly be in the path of a gamma burst, an asteroid or something else, and we would never see it coming. You might just go to sleep today and in the middle of the night scientists discover a gamma ray coming at us again. The universe doesn't stop there, it continues. Our existence is less than a galactic blink. The universe expands, and there will be a day that our planet will be floating alone and cold in darkness forever too. With a lethal dose of radiation, victims of acute radiation sickness will, after hours of vomiting and feeling horrible, start to feel much better. Then, they will descend into a heck of a painful death. It's rare, but you can die at any moment for literally no reason at all. Your body just stops working. That 99% of all life that has ever existed has gone extinct. A buddy of mine is a pilot for a major airline, in top 3 of airlines. I asked him exactly how much flying are you actually doing during a flight, like how much are you controlling the plane. He said about 5%. 95% of a flight is completely automated. He said he was involved a little bit on takeoff and on the landing, but for the most part the plane flies itself unless something major happens in flight. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.